we believe in self-governance, that the people we elect to run the government, for God's sake, ought to be the ones who actually run the government, not unelected bureaucrats in the deep state that are running the show today. So you want another mass deportation? Let's get 3 million federal bureaucrats out of the D.C. bureaucracy. That's the mass deportation that saves the country.
All right, deport the bureaucracy. I love that. Joining us now, Vivek Ramaswamy. He's a businessman and author of Truths, The Future of America First. Vivek, I just want to say, your speech at the Garden on Sunday was just wonderful. We've already quoted you several times, and it's a pleasure to have you back on the show. And we should have a mass deportation of all these permanent, tenured bureaucrats in Washington. And the neat thing is, listen, as you know, Elon Musk wants to join you in this. Howard Lutnick from the transition wants to join you. You know, what they call DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency. I mean, now's the time, and I think you've got the group around Mr. Trump to get this done.
Absolutely. For the first time in American history, we also have Supreme Court precedent at our back. In this case, they're American citizens, Larry, but I would just say deport them into the private sector from the bureaucracy. That's where we need them right now. And you hear the MSNBCs of the world, whenever they talk about protect our democracy, what do they actually mean? They actually mean protect our bureaucracy. And that bureaucracy is really the one that is the actual threat to democracy, because the people who we elect to run the government, they're not the ones making most of the rules. They're the unelected bureaucrats that are writing these unconstitutional regulations. And the reason I'm really optimistic for the second Trump term is not just because Donald Trump's ready to do it. It's not just because of the team of people I hope to be an important part of that, to be able to drive that change in this country. But even more importantly of all, the Supreme Court has given us the legal backdrop to do it, saying that if it was an important regulation, a major question, it should have gone through Congress rather than through the agencies, overturning Chevron deference. This is a once-in-a-century opportunity, Larry, and I think that it's up to us to step up and seize it, and I think that's the mandate that people are going to give us on November 5th.
Well, I think it would bring joy to the majority of voters. We will find that out a week from today. But, I mean, so you've got options here, right? You could disband the whole department. I mean, if you ask me, the education department could be disbanded. I'm not sure anybody would care. Maybe send a few of them out into the countryside. Other departments could be substantially cut. A friend of mine was saying the other day, Vivek, if you take a look at what Elon Musk did when he took over Twitter, I mean, I think he slashed 90% of the staff at Twitter because he saw it was not necessary when he turned it into X. I assume your management style would be very similar to that. So what kinds of things do you want to do? Let's say day one, up to the first 100 days. Do you want to go after the agencies? Do you want to go after the people? Do you want to go after the bureaucracy? Change the mission? Put a little meat on the bones for us, please.
Yeah. So I think there's one way that I think is the wrong way to go, which is to say that we want to take the left-wing bureaucracy and replace it with the right-wing bureaucracy. I think that's a failing strategy. We have to keep our eye on the North Star of actually shutting down that bureaucracy. So step one is to take a look at that Supreme Court landscape. What's the list of all of the regulations that failed the Supreme Court's test? The regulations on the books right now that are unconstitutional according to the current Supreme Court. I believe, Larry, that could quite possibly be a majority of current federal regulations. I don't say that hyperbolically. I say it literally, using the standards the Supreme Court has now laid out. Well, now, if you've thinned out the regulatory state in terms of the regulations by over 50%, that gives you a roadmap to say that we don't need 50% of those bureaucrats either. It gives you a rational basis for mass headcount reductions where there aren't claims of racial or gender discrimination or political viewpoint discrimination. When you have these large mass firings, that falls outside the civil service rules. So these are straight up laid up by the Supreme Court and legal precedents. It's now up to us to have the electoral mandate to actually carry that out, which is why the next 7 days are so critical. But once we send Donald Trump back to the White House with a mandate to drain that swamp, armed with Supreme Court precedents that he did not have back in 2016, I will remind you, that allows us ultimately to create a government that is accountable to the people rather than the other way around, which is what we've had really since the last century. Woodrow Wilson, then you get to FDR, then you get to LBJ, and even some Republican presidents like Richard Nixon along the way that have expanded this. We get to put a century-long project finally to rest to say that we're going to revive a self-governing constitutional republic that our founders wanted to see And by the way, Larry, that is the single greatest economic stimulus that we could give the United States of America right now, is take that regulatory wet blanket off of our economy. Drill, frack, burn coal, embrace nuclear. It's an energy and innovation boom in this country. It's waiting to happen. We just got to send Donald Trump to the White House to do it.
So I was just thinking two things quickly, Vivek. First of all, the Civil Rights Act, 1964, Title VI and Title VII, expressly forbade affirmative action on the basis of gender or sex or color. So you have entire bureaucracies called DEI have sprung up, and other bureaucracies related to DEI. Those should go, and the people should go. No, this stuff is illegal. I'm surprised it hasn't been struck down. I mean, the courts have struck down part of it, but not all of it. The other thing I'm thinking about as you're talking about it is, with respect to these bureaucracies and let's say Chevron deference, there are no legislative mandates for these regulations. So therefore, okay, out, you're gone. No legislation, then there's no bureaucracy. Those are just thoughts that I have. You know, I worked in the budget office a long time ago, and I've been in government. Why not? Those are two things right there. Use the Civil Rights Act and use Chevron deference. There's no legislation, you're out of here.
Absolutely. And Chevron deference, the overturning of that in the Supreme Court was a seismic event this year. The problem is some of those acts from the 1960s also created agencies, Larry, as you well know, like the EEOC, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, that actually went on to do far more damage to the private sector than anybody who actually voted for the Civil Rights Act ever imagined in the first place. So we have 60 years, I would argue, almost a century's worth of damage to undo. That's what makes this a historic opportunity, a historic election. Also, just as a very pragmatic matter for people who run businesses, you know that generally 20% of people do 80% of the work. At a government agency, it's even far more skewed than that. So I think a lot of the agencies that need to continue to exist, which are just a handful of them certainly, will function better when they're thinned out. And then many of those agencies, like the Department of Education to many others, don't even need to exist in the first place. And the mistake of a lot of conservatives in the last 60 years has been to go incrementally, to think that you could somehow bring a chisel and optimize that bureaucracy. That is a myth, Larry. I think that if you want to get this done right, you can't just mess around the edges. You have to go to the heart of it, go big, non-incrementally, shut it down, make our founding fathers proud. That's how you grow an economy. And by the way, even a lot of independents, centrists, and even some Democrats would agree with me on this one. I think we'll unite the country while doing it.
It's a structural problem. That's right. It's not just it's not a functional problem. It's not even a personnel problem. It's, in so many cases, it's an absolute structural problem. The whole structure has got to come down. Some cases you're going to save them, and you'll put better people in to run them, maybe downsize them. A lot of cases, don't save a single thing. Anyway, Vivek Ramaswamy, thank you for your wisdom and your leadership and a wonderful speech at Madison Square Garden on Sunday evening. Appreciate it very much.